At 9:10 and 1 second, Nanette Johnston became a millionaire.
By now, Johnston has already been convicted in a court of law for stealing $500,000 from McLaughlin, and convicted in the court of public opinion for being a greedy girlfriend. But her defense wants to ask the jury one last question.
Hate her as much as you want for being a thief, a liar, a cheat, a slut, whatever you want to call her.
Can you call her a murderer?
I guess if truth be told, she just had some very appealing attributes that she used very well. She distracts you over here with her beauty, her looks, her body. And meanwhile, she's got a whole nother agenda, and that's in full swing.
Before Nanette Johnston ever meets Bill McLaughlin, she sharpens her manipulative skills on Tom Reynolds in 1990 while he works the door of a popular nightclub in Orange County, California.
We basically met. Things hit off rather well. She came back to my place, which was down in Newport. And then before I knew it, she had moved in. It was not pre-designed. Looking back, I kind of wonder how it happened.
Johnston essentially moves in immediately, and Reynolds quickly notices she has a taste for the finer things at his expense.
She was very focused on money and where it was coming from and how much was around. We went out and got all new furniture. It was redecorated, top to bottom. New couch, new bed, new TV. Everything was done in whitewash from upstairs to downstairs.
She had a gift. That woman had a gift.
Orange County Deputy District Attorney Matt Murphy says that engulfing men in sex, lies, and vagaries is standard operating procedure for Nanette Johnston.
This is what she does. She meets men, she manipulates them, and she destroys their lives. Everybody's got a talent. That's her talent.
And one day, Reynolds realizes he isn't the first to fall prey to Johnston's talents.
An ex-boyfriend came by at one point. I found him lurking, literally stalking, walking back and forth in front of the house, and he was trying to track her down. She had deceived him in some way. They had been involved, and she had gotten money from him, and when she had done that, the relationship he thought existed did not.
It seems to be a pattern with Nanette Johnston.
You start thinking about how did this whole situation come about, because there really was no planning, wasn't any formality to it. It just, here I was in the middle of it, which is pretty much as he had described it. He said all of a sudden he looked around and things were gone, money was gone, and she was gone. And I'm like, well, everything so far, but not the gone part, and that really started making me wonder.
Perhaps this relationship isn't all sunshine and roses.
I found a lockbox, and that lockbox had a canceled check. That canceled check was made out to a magazine that we don't have a subscription. And I looked up what magazine it was, and it was a hookup magazine. So I just went by the dates, found that issue, and lo and behold, it's in bold print.
Wealthy men only. Single white female. Classy, well-educated, adventurous, fun. Looking for an older man who knows how to treat a woman. You take care of me, and I'll take care of you.
And here I am looking at this and knowing she's living in my home. I'm like, well, if you're going to be wanting those wealthy men, I don't think there's enough room in here, time for you to leave.
In a short period of time, Johnston finds her next mark, Bill McLaughlin.
My wife today, she jokes, good thing you weren't making more money than you were, because it could have been you.
Whether Bill answered that ad or whether they met him one of these other ways, nobody really knows. All we know for sure is that McLaughlin had been married for about 30 years to a very, very nice woman. He had 3 beautiful, super sweet kids. And when he got divorced, he basically met the worst woman in Orange County.
His business partner invents a groundbreaking medical device that makes the two millionaires dozens of times over.
They invented a centrifuge that would separate plasma from blood. It's still being used today, and it is incredibly lucrative.
After his divorce in 1990, family friend Sandy Baumgartner says there was a vacuum in McLaughlin's life. and she sees how the 52-year-old fills the void at a Christmas party in 1991.
Bill and Nanette walked in, and she was a great deal younger, and I managed to glean through conversation that she and I were, in fact, the same age, 3 weeks apart, and I was 26 years old at the time.
For a 26-year-old, Johnston seems to have an impressive resume. She tells Baumgartner she earned a PhD from Arizona State and once owned her own business. But something about Johnston doesn't feel right.
She was talking about all this education and such, and as I was doing the math, something wasn't ringing true with, the list of accomplishments in the resume, if you will, that she was rattling off to me.
Nevertheless, when Baumgartner sees Johnston again 2 years later, McLaughlin and Johnston are still together. And she sees a transformed Nanette Johnston.
It looked like she had a little facial surgery and she had some breast augmentation done.
McLaughlin's family, particularly his daughters Kim and Jenny, are not impressed.
Kim sat Bill down one time and said, "Look, I think she's after you for your money." And, he said, "Well, thank you very much for your input." But, I think he took this stance of duly noted.
Johnston moves into McLaughlin's house, converting guest bedrooms into bedrooms for her 2 children from a previous marriage. McLaughlin treats them as his own. And before long, it appears he's going to make it official.
In '93, he came to me and asked me my thoughts about him getting married.
Brian Ringler has been McLaughlin's accountant since the mid-'80s, and McLaughlin tells him he wants Johnston to be a permanent part of his life.
And he said his concern was that he would be able to provide for her should something happen to him. And so we had discussed some various options, and one of the things that he ended up doing was getting a life insurance policy.
The insurance policy is for $1 million, naming Johnston as the sole beneficiary. And it comes just in time. Within a year of getting the policy, shots ring out in Newport Beach. Actress, singer, and social activist Jennifer Lewis has spent decades on the Broadway stage and starred in dozens of movies. And in 2015, Lewis is on top of her game when she earns a co-starring role as savagely funny Ruby Johnson on the TV series Blackish.
Just got Blackish and boom. I said, oh, God sent the man.
The man is Antonio, Tony Marriott Wilson, a manager and personal trainer at the LA Fitness, where Lewis escapes from her hectic schedule for a quick workout. Lewis isn't looking for a boyfriend, but one fine spring day, love is in the air.
So he bumped into me as I was exiting the gym. And it happened to be just a happy day. So when he did, I smiled and said, "Excuse me," and he smiled back. He complimented my hair, and I kind of flirted with him. He flirted with me, and we met for coffee.
Lewis now believes the bump was a ruse, but at the time it seemed like a harmless one. She's flattered and charmed.
He said he had graduated from Oxford University. He'd been a Navy SEAL. His mother had passed away. He had 2 children and was divorced.
Lewis is impressed.
Well, he was beautiful. He was handsome, well-spoken. He was educated. I mean, what woman wouldn't, sit up when someone says they graduated from Oxford?
Intriguingly, despite Lewis's long career and high visibility in Blackish, Tony Wilson also says he's unfamiliar with Lewis's work on stage and screen. Is his professed ignorance a power move?
When he said he didn't know me as an actress, I believed him in that he was in England.
Within weeks, Wilson sweeps Jennifer Lewis off her feet. She finds her personal and now exclusive trainer is a bona fide Renaissance man, a real-life Indiana Jones. Yes, the former Navy SEAL is an Oxford grad, but he's also an author, theology professor at UCLA, biblical studies archaeologist. By all appearances, Tony Wilson is a catch. According to Lewis, Wilson is deeply religious, and his claims are credible. He shows her his writings, and when she checks online, his books are available on Amazon.
Nothing about him made me not think he hadn't graduated from Oxford.
A good visual doesn't hurt either, as Jennifer finds when she opens the door one day to find Tony in full military garb, replete with the Navy SEAL's trident to wow his famous girlfriend.
He wore his uniform here and said he had just trained some young Navy SEALs. He brought medals to my house and said, "This is the one Clinton pinned on me after a special task force."
And to top it all off, turns out they're both in the movie business. He says he's a motion picture sound designer for blockbuster films like Jurassic Park and King Kong. What's not to believe? He seems to know his way around Hollywood as well as Jennifer.
We would be driving near a studio, and he would say things like, "That's the building that we worked on with Jurassic Park."
But his real passion isn't fame, he tells Jennifer. It's fortune. He's a mogul in the making. With all his industry know-how, he's created a specialized sound effects company, Ultimate FX. And he says he already has multi-million-dollar prospects in the works with blue-chip clients like ABC and EA Sports. Ultimate FX is ready to launch into the stratosphere. He just needs to find the right investors. It's an exciting time for Jennifer Lewis.
And to the graduates who majored in theater arts, don't think that I'm not aware that you are now my competition.
But it's also a fragile time.
In all of that, movies and television and commencement speeches, my mother just happened to be ill at the time that I met Tony. I was real busy. So basically, I was not paying attention.
Though in court statements, Wilson will later deny that his relationship with Lewis was ever intimate, his texts to her calling her the future Mrs. Wilson imply a serious romance. The reason I don't want to know about you or see your work is to know for certain I love you and nothing else. It is my hope we get to a place where we never have to think about cash, but the peace it brings.
One of my girlfriends one night, she came in and she was like, "Jenny's in love, Jenny's in love, Jenny's in love." Well, I kind of told her, "No, I'm not in love. I'm in a relationship, but I'm not in love yet, you know?"
But when he introduces Jennifer to his children, she melts.
When I saw how beautiful they were, smart and lovely, I softened. And he built up this fantasy world. And I started thinking, could I live a normal life? Could I actually marry and raise 2 children, help raise 2 children? And I was like, why not?
Wilson offers undying devotion and a comfortable, if conventional, life together. Less than 3 months after meeting Antonio Wilson, Lewis is sold. In September 2018, a throng of reporters surrounds California congressional representative for the 50th District, Duncan Dwayne Hunter. As a politician, he's used to a gaggle of press and occasionally critical constituents, but these lock-him-up chants are new. That's because Congressman Hunter and his wife Margaret find themselves smack in the middle of a legal firestorm. They're accused of stealing $250,000 in campaign funds, and they're facing jaw-dropping 60-count indictments. This isn't the spotlight Duncan Hunter bargained for, and it's far from the storybook ending that could have been. In this stretch of Southern California, reaching from the San Diego coastline deep into the suburbs,
The name Hunter has long had huge political cachet. Political reporter Charles Clark knows the family history well.
The Duncan Hunter name and just the Hunter name has a really powerful impact in that area because Duncan's dad was very, very popular.
Duncan's dad is Duncan Lee Hunter, a decorated Vietnam vet and a staunch Ronald Reagan-era Republican. Adam Andrzejewski is executive director of OpenTheBooks.com, a database that aims to track every dime spent by congressmen and other public officials.
So when Duncan Hunter was 4 years old, his father won a seat in Congress, and the year was 1981. And he rose through the ranks to become a powerful member of Congress.
Duncan Lee Hunter was the congressman for most of the same geographic area for 28 years. He became chair of the Armed Services Committee. But when you add that to you representing San Diego County, which has like the highest concentration of military personnel, he's just a massive, massive figure.
Growing up as the oldest son of an influential congressman, Duncan's childhood pictures include President Reagan, and he shuttles between bi-coastal stays in Washington, D.C. and California. His dad's position helps in the romance department, too. As a teenager, Duncan finds young love with a former refugee from Poland named Margaret Jankowski.
She was volunteering for his dad, and that's how they met. They started dating and they got married.
Morgan Cook is an investigative reporter for the San Diego Union Tribune.
According to the court filings, she never wanted him to have a life in politics. And they had discussed it, and he said that he wasn't going to have a life in politics.
The newlyweds move in with his parents, while Duncan finishes a degree in business administration at San Diego State. Life is looking up for the young couple. And then, on September 11th, 2001, everything changes.
Apparently, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here in New York City. It happened just a few moments ago.
After the attacks, and without telling Margaret beforehand, Duncan Hunter enlists in the United States Marine Corps.
I think especially for people out here where that military service is really part of the fabric of the community, that really meant a lot to people. He didn't have to do it, right? He chose to.
According to court papers, Duncan's unilateral decision understandably causes tremendous stress for his worried wife. After serving repeated tours of combat duty in Iraq, Hunter returns home in 2006 as a Marine reservist, and then moves the family to Boise, Idaho, for a civilian life in real estate. Margaret calls it the happiest, most stable time in her life. But thanks to a strategically timed retirement, it won't last long. In early 2007, Duncan Lee Hunter makes a decision.
As I finish my final 2 years as chairman of the Armed Services Committee and serve you, I'm also going to be preparing to run for President of the United States in 2008.
At his father's urging, Duncan decides to move the family back to California and run as the heir apparent for his father's congressional seat. Again, say her attorneys, without consulting Margaret.
She was not thrilled about that, but wanted to support him anyway.
But as soon as he announced, he was recalled into the Marine Corps and went to Afghanistan to serve in our efforts over there.
He, by rules, couldn't actually actively campaign because he was a military service member. So his wife did all the campaigning.
Margaret is so invested in helping the campaign that photos of her stumping for her husband are posted on his former website. And on election night 2008, the Hunters celebrate another congressman in the family.
Margaret, she didn't love the limelight. She wanted to just go back to her life that she'd had before.
But those days are over. Duncan Dwayne Hunter has arrived.
He won his first election by double digits. Yeah, his dad's name ID helped, right? But still, that's pretty impressive. He comes back, he takes office in January of 2009, and from that point on, they kind of never looked back.
Duncan's going to have that same thing happen where he takes on a subcommittee of his choosing.
We'll see, yeah.
We'll make sure. There's a long tradition in your family, you know.
Overnight, the 32-year-old Marine finds himself with a hefty $174,000 congressional salary and handsome benefits. But as Emily Allen, a federal prosecutor on the Hunter's case, will later discover, that salary proves no match for the couple's serious money management issues.
I don't want to impugn him or his family for not being wealthy, but what we're talking about is something very different. It's just a total lack of basic budgeting ability for his family and completely spending well beyond his means.
And with mortgage payments to make on a newly purchased $595,000 home outside of San Diego, the Hunters are entering their glamorous new life perpetually strapped for cash. As a former federal prosecutor on the Hunter case, Phil Halpern explains that it's a predicament most of Duncan's new colleagues don't have to worry about.
When he first went to Washington in January 2009, Hunter realized a lot of the congressmen had a lot more money. In fact, they all had more money than he did.
So right off the bat, young Duncan starts looking for other sources of income.
And during that time, it appears he raided the petty cash that his campaign treasurer had on hand.
Over the years, Margaret and Duncan dip into petty cash as a quick fix for personal items when funds are tight. But why just pilfer from petty cash when a credit card can unlock instant access to a fat campaign war chest? In late 2009, at Duncan's request, staffers order campaign credit cards, including one for him and another just for Margaret.
And almost instantly, from getting that campaign credit card, it was a license to steal.
Stacy Keach here, feeling greedy for more videos like this one? Then be sure to like and subscribe right here on CNBC Prime.